Shalom Uvracha. In this week's Parashat we have the very first occurrence in the Torah of the word Dibbah. Dibbah meaning slander, as it's often translated. Dibbah could also be something which is true. We would call this Lashon Hara, Lashon Hara. The first time we find it is with Yosef telling his father about the misdeeds of his brothers. The only other time we find the word Dibbah in the Torah is concerning the Meraglim. When the Meraglim bring the negative report about the land, the Torah says this is called Vayotziu Dibbas Haaretz. Ra'ah. They brought out the negative speech, the slander about the land. And I think there's a deep common denominator between these two occurrences, which also has very important repercussions, ramifications for our own speech. What Yosef did when he spoke negatively about his brothers was to undo, to separate between himself and his brothers. He literally undid the ties of brotherhood that connected between them. And this led, albeit didn't have to lead, but ultimately this led to the separation, to the hatred of the brothers to Yosef, to his sale into Egypt, and to untold suffering over multiple decades. But where did it start from? It started from the lack of unity that the words, that this report that Yosef brought to his father manifested, represented. This lack of unity is expressed, is articulated by the word Dibbah. Dibbah is the opposite of the idea of Dibbur. Dibbur, an item of speech, includes two components, two aspects. One aspect of speech is to provide information, to be informative, to tell somebody else something he might not know. But the other aspect of speech is the relationship. Whenever we engage in true speech with somebody else, there's a connection going on. The Dibbur involves a connection, an act of relating, of being connected with somebody else who I'm speaking with. Dibbah neutralizes the aspect of the connection. The Gemara tells us in Erech and also in Shabbos, Rabbah says, how do we define or how do we know if an act of speech is Lashon Hara or whether it's fine? Well, says Rabbah, I'll tell you, if it's something that would be said in front of the subject that's being spoken about, if it's said before him or would be said before him, then that's not Lashon Hara. But if it's something that wouldn't be said before him, then that's Lashon Hara. Rav Yossi says, I've never said something and looked behind my back to check if the subject that's being spoken about might be listening and then I'll get into trouble. I've never said something that I wouldn't say in front of the subject I'm speaking about. Meaning, says Rav Yossi, all of my speech, all of my words are not devoid of relationship. They would be said in relationship to him too. And therefore they're not Lashon Hara. Even if it's something negative, it's not something that goes against, it's not something that undermines the relationship. Yosef, when he spoke Dibbah against his brothers, undermined the relationship. And when the Meraglim, when they spoke the negative speech about the land, they undermined the relationship with Hashem. They undermined the connection with the land. Like the Pasuk says in Tehillim, Vaymasu be'eretz chemda, they despised the cherished, the beautiful land. V'lo ha'eminu bidvaroi, they didn't trust Hashem. No trust, no connection, no relationship. And that's why the word Dibbah is used in both instances. In both cases, there was a breaking, an undermining of a relationship, the opposite of Dibbur, of speech, which incorporates an element of closeness, of connection, of relationship. Indeed, at the end of Yosef's life, in the last time we find him speaking to his brothers, so he cries, B'dabra elav, when they speak to him, and when he speaks to them, it says, Vayidaber el libam, he spoke to their hearts, he united them, he ensured that the relationship was strong, was close, was there. And the same thing is so important for us. Of course, sometimes we engage in critique in criticism. We must. That's the only way that we can improve as a society, to sometimes engage in criticism. But our criticism must not be devoid of relationship. When we speak about others, about ourselves, about other sectors, other branches of society, has to be the kind of speech that we would say within the context of a relationship, of closeness, of brotherhood. Then the criticism can be accepted because it's within that context. If it's Dibbah, it will only be destructive, because then it undermines, then it's devoid of the connection of the relationship, and then it won't be able to have any positive effect, only destructive, only destruction. Let all of our words be words of Dibbur and not words, Chalila, of Dibbah, and may we all have a beautiful Shabbos.